Welcome back, students, to Government 2305. This is federal government. Week one, the context of U.S. politics. So you should have watched the Lecture Zero video that talked about the syllabus and the course overview. And this is the second video for this week, where we're going to look at the context of U.S. politics. All right. So we start off with what is government? So government is the legitimate use of force to control human behavior within territorial boundaries. Um, right, like the US government controls everything that happens in the 50 states and in the territories overseas, right? So that's the legitimate force of government, right? The legitimate force that America, the United States has, right? They can project force here by passing laws, right? And the people have to follow those laws, right? So it requires citizens to surrender some freedoms to obtain its benefits. The more citizens are willing to surrender, the less force necessary. A government is legitimate when citizens recognize its right to rule, right? Right, like for the most part, Americans view they legitimize our U.S. government, right? Because we recognize its right to rule because of the contract that we've created with the U.S. government, where we can participate in government decisions, right? So that allows us to give it legitimacy, right? We participate in through voting, uh, you know, uh, uh, listing our grievances, right? Petitioning the government, sending messages, talking to our representatives. That is the contract that Americans have made with government. So what's the principal purpose of government? So it has three main purposes. The first one is to maintain order, right? Thomas Hobbes said life without government is solitary, lonely, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. This is in his book Leviathan. Uh, Locke would say, right, the fundamental purpose of government is the protection of life, liberty, and property. That's the purpose of government, to create stability, to have order. We no chaos, right? The state of nature, according to Locke. So people give up some rights, some right for protection from the government. That's one of the benefits. Uh, Governments provide public goods to benefit all, right? Safety, uh, right? Access to road to markets, right? To promote commerce, right? That's why the government sets up a road system. Mail is another one. Law enforcement to protect us to feel secure. Government services, right? Um, Lincoln said the government is to do for us what we cannot do ourselves. Okay? So the government is there to uh, provide us with benefits that we ourselves don't have the time because of different reasons, right? So we can have the government support. Perfect example would be safety, right? We don't want to feel we don't feel the need. Well, some of us do, but for the most part, most Americans don't feel the need to carry a weapon to protect themselves when they go out and about. They leave that to the government to protect to protect us to feel secure. And the newest function is equality, um, redistribute income to try to end the income inequality in different parts of the world. Different governments are addressing that in various different policy initiatives. Then political equality versus economic equality. That becomes the conflict. So do we stress political equality where we try to make sure that everyone participates, everyone has a voice in government, Or do we focus on economic equality where we try to end the income inequality, right, the top percent, and then at the bottom you have the lower working class, the poor people. So what equality do we um, address? Is it political or economic equality? And for different governments, it varies which one they decide. These are the values pursued by government. A little bit similar to what we just discussed. Order, right? Again, we no chaos. We want stability. So that's, that's why there's laws, punishment. So if you go with the narrow interpretation of order, again, like Locke said, life, liberty, and property, right? Government should protect my life. I should feel safe, liberty, right? The government should protect my freedom, right? The the right to express myself freely without, being killed, attacked by the government or by others, and property, right? The fact that, farm, physical property, intellectual property should be protected, right? So if someone steals my property, there should be punishment, right? To stop those, to deter others from doing the same. Now, the broad interpretation of order would say government power to enforce traditional modes of behavior or to provide certain public goods. Uh, so, right, we see people deviating from the norm. So, should government step in and stop those deviations and say, hey, no, you cannot do that because that's going against the traditional values of our society? Should government get involved? Or we see that, again, there's back to the income inequality. People don't have enough. They don't have, stable housing. They don't have access to public education or higher education. Should the government get involved and promote order, promote stability, so that people don't create the conditions of a potential revolution? Freedom, again, governments diminish freedom to an extent, right? You don't have the right to you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want in a government, right? There are limits. So the narrow interpretation would be liberty and freedom to, right, limits to your, right, liberty and freedom, right? You can start your own business, right? But at the same time, right, you have guidelines on what you can buy, or in this case, and what you can sell. If you're a consumer, right, you have money, you make money, you have a job, but there's guidelines on what you can, guidelines and regulations on what you can buy, right? You cannot buy, like like drugs with your money, right? Because it's a crime, right? So again, narrow interpretation would be there's guidelines, regulations, right? It's limited. Your freedom is limited. Then you have the broad interpretation of freedom, which is equality, right? We're trying to pursue the equality, the freedom to, a perfect example would be the civil rights movement, right? I should have the freedom to go to the same school as the white students. I shouldn't be forced to get on a bus that's going to take me across town to go to the minority school, right? Or I should have the freedom to go to this store or this restaurant and be offered service, right, with the other white Americans and not be told that I have to go to my own color section of my own color section of restaurant, right? So that would be the broad interpretation. Equality, again, like I said earlier, this is the newest purpose of government. The narrow interpretation of equality, political equality, one man, one vote. So having, everyone in a society participate in government, right? You have a voice, that voice is your vote, and that's how you express your feelings uh, towards the government. If you reject the government's position, you can reject their candidates, right? I don't like this candidate. He's not expressing my will, so thumbs down. I like this guy or this person, this politician. They're doing good for the community, so I'm going to keep voting for him. Thumbs up, right? One man, one vote. The broad interpretation would be equality of opportunity under capitalism, right? You have winners and losers. Not everyone is going to be able in a capitalist society become millionaires. You have people at the bottom who are, they're poor, low income, who are never ever going to be at the top of the socioeconomic ladder. So the broad interpretation would say, let's get rid of that dynamic and let's have a society where everyone's equal. Right? There is no, right? There's no class divisions. There's no uh, right, rich, middle class, and poor, right? Everyone's equal in that sense. And then you have the equality of outcome, socialism. Uh, again, which deals a little bit with what I just said earlier, right? Uh, you have the equality of outcome would state that everyone there's no winners or losers. Everyone is going to have the same outcome. You go to school, right? The government will provide your schooling, right? You get an education, and then the government will decide what your future is going to be, right? There's no lower tier people. Everyone's equal. All right. So now let's look at the forms of government. Forms of government. So a government that is governed by a single individual is called an autocracy. You have a king, right? We're familiar with these terms, monarchy, a dictator, dictatorship. It's considered an autocracy. Uh, Governed by a small group of people, such as wealthy landowners, military officers, or elites. That's called an oligarchy. If you've been following American politics for the past, couple of months, right, candidates, politicians they're starting to use this word oligarchy when they talk about how here in the United States there's a group of people who they're the wealthy elites, right? The big corporations, the ones that are getting the big tax breaks, they're paying very low taxes, while the rest of us are we don't get services. So they're trying to make the argument that that's what America is right now, an oligarchy, right? Candidates are saying, the Epstein class, and that's coded for oligarchy. Like there's the rich people who are that control America, and they're benefiting to a huge extreme, while the rest of us are suffering and are trying to get by with scraps, right? Uh, And then you have democracy, where people practice popular sovereignty. What is popular sovereignty? The will of the people. Right? My voice in government. Like I said it earlier, right? You like a candidate, your voice, yes, I vote for that candidate. I don't like the candidate, he's doing a bad job, thumbs down, you vote him out of office. You probably don't vote, or you vote for his or her opponent. All right. So how do governments govern? Uh, well, constitutional governments, most modern nations, right, have some type of constitution that places limits on what governments can do. I mean, here in the United States, a common example, our Constitution, right? Three branches of government. We'll talk about this next week, but three branches of government, right? Separation of powers, checks and balances. So the Constitution becomes like the rules, the playbook, the rule book, excuse me. And the rule book states what branch of government can and cannot do, right? And the same thing with the other branches. Uh, Authoritarian governments impose few real limits. The government is put in check by other political and social institutions. Um, so an example would be Egypt. Their leader is their leader he's put in check by the military. So for the most part, the military has a check on him. So if he wants to do anything, he needs to get some type of plea clearance by the military. If not, there could be a coup. The military can step in, get rid of him, and install someone else. Then you have a totalitarian government. The perfect example would be North Korea, where you know the leader, the figurehead of the country eliminates all institutions to challenge their authority. So he has the final say in those governments. So there's no one to challenge him. There's no one to he doesn't have to check and like, hey, I want to I want to start negotiating with the United States, right? He doesn't have to talk to the military, to his advisors. If he wants to do it, he just does it. As compared to Egypt, our authoritarian example, he would have to get plea clearance from the military or from other elites in Egypt to um to see if he can pursue that new policy, right? So here in the United States, right, we're gonna look now at democracy. Our framers, the founding fathers, influenced by John Locke, English philosopher, right? Consent of the governed, the social contract, right? That people participate in government. We create a contract that humans, men live in the state of nature, and we give up some rights and responsibilities to form a government, and the government then becomes this institution that is going to protect us, that's going to protect our property, our lives, and our liberty, right? But when the government starts abusing its power, when there's chaos, there's disorder, right? The people have a right to overthrow the government, right, and install a new one that is going to that's going to promote the protection of life, liberty, and property. That's what John Locke would say. And that's going to influence the Americans when they declare their independence from the British, which we'll discuss next week. So the United States has elements of a democracy, right? Majority rule, minority rights. When we talk about minority rights, we're not talking about minority rights such as like, ethnicity. All right, we're not talking about those minorities. We're talking about minority rights in the sense of people that like when they vote for something, um, right, their minority rights would say that they have some type of voice in the process. And the perfect example would be here when we talk about the Senate, when we talk about Congress, how to pass anything in the Senate, you need to have at least 60 votes of legislation to overcome the filibuster, and the filibuster is there to protect the rights of the minority. So they have a way to fight back against the will of the majority. I mean, right? And we'll talk about that more in the weeks ahead when we get to the Congress. If you ask most Americans down the street and you ask what type of government America has, they'll say democracy, and technically that is correct, but the correct terminology is a representative democracy or a republic, right? What's the difference? So in a democracy, you have everyone voting for like all the poli all the policy decisions. So could you imagine if we were trying if the United States government was trying to pass, free college for everyone in America under a democratic model, right? That would require everyone in the United States to vote on that. But, but in a Republican form of government, a representative democracy, we vote for leaders to make those decisions for us because either, right, we're not well informed, we have too many things going in our lives. So we vote for someone, our leaders, to make those decisions for us. And if they vote for policies, for bills that do not align with our views, then when it comes to election time, we can get rid of those people and install new ones. Um, Another way we have representative democracy is the initiative and referendum policies, and these are in the initiative referendum. We don't have these here in the state of Texas, but in other states you do, where people, the citizens of that state, they can propose new legislation. They can get petitions, starting a petition, and then taking all those signatures to their politicians and say, hey, look, we want to implement this new policy. We have all these signatures. Yes, you can see we have a large group of people who are, we have a large group of people where we can, who want this new policy. And then that they leave it up to the people of the state. They put that in the ballot. And one of the reasons why, marijuana has been legalized in many states is because they've done that process, the initiative process, and the referendum. Okay. In other states, you can also the recall, right? We don't have that in Texas, but California has a recall mechanism where the people get enough signatures and they can recall their governor, right? So the governor's doing a bad job. But we don't want to wait for his term to end so we can recall him. We get enough signatures, right? It goes in the back. There's a special election, and then now people decide, should we get rid of the governor before his term expires? That's in certain states. Texas does not have the recall mechanism. But those are elements of representative democracy. Now we're going to look at political ideology. So, a political ideology is a consistent set of values and beliefs about purpose and scope of government. In other words, is what you think government should do, or what you think, or excuse me, how do you think government should function, right? And your political ideology, again, that is developed by the interactions that you have with family and friends, your neighborhood, school, and depending on the people that come into your life, your political ideology is going to change. Okay. Social media is now one of the biggest drivers of political ideology. So here you can pause and you can zoom in and see how different people, right, from the right and the left, feel about certain topics. Okay. So there's two ways to classify American politics, excuse me. Okay. So the scope of government activity, right? So single dimension, broad positions without extremes. So in other words, what should the government be doing? So you have two ideals. Liberalism, right? Focus on, again, democracy, freedom of religion, market economy, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, secularism, right? And then you have conservatism, which is a reactionary ideology where you try to stop, you don't want a lot of democracy because you don't want to give the people too much power because that's going to lead to revolution. You still believe in a free market economy, but right, you want the economy to benefit, the American public, the here in the United States, right? You know, free market in the sense of here in the United States, not free market in the sense the whole world, right? Because you don't, products from other countries might harm American manufacturers, right? The freedom of religion, to an extent, freedom of religion is okay, uh, but you want traditional religion, right? Christianity. Freedom of the press, as long as it doesn't go overboard, as long as you're not attacking the government, it's okay. Same thing with freedom of speech. And again, you're trying to stop the forces of liberalism, right? Because liberalism is going too far, too fast, and it can lead to revolution. It can lead to the collapse of the American society. And then the second classification would be the values pursued by government. So what values should government pursue, right? So again, two dimensions, broad positions, but more useful method. It's breaking it down like this. So libertarians are not the same as liberals, even though the terms look the same. Libertarians, they tend to be more right wing. Uh, they favor freedom over order, right? So they're big Second Amendment proponents. Right? They believe in small government, that the government should not get involved in your lives at all. So freedom, like you should have the freedom to do whatever you want, right? Again, very small government. In the 80s, when a lot of states around the country started implementing seatbelt requirements, libertarians threw a fit, right? They got upset. They were like, no, 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 no. Like that's infringing on my rights, right? I should have the freedom not to wear a seatbelt, right? And you saw this also during COVID. A lot of libertarians were against the mask mandates because again, they believe that the government should not be telling people what to do. Conservatives favor freedom. Again, they favor freedom over equality, right? So freedom, you should be able to do whatever for the most part, do whatever you want, right? But favor order over freedom. So if that freedom disrupts the status quo or the stability of a country, they're going to be against it because for conservatives, the status quo, stability, order is the main priority. Anything that deviates from that, it's no good, and they're going to be against that. So a common example would be right-wing conservatives, religious conservatives um, are afraid that the country is moving to secularism, right? People are losing faith in God. Uh, right? They're not being religious anymore, so they see that America is losing its Christian values, so they favor some type of way to restore those values back. So school prayer, providing funding to religious schools for public education. And then you have liberals. They favor freedom over order, right? But favor equality over freedom. So for liberals, equality is their main focus, making sure that people have access, um, for the most sense, political access, um, right? So one man, one vote, no voting barriers. You should be able to participate in government. You should have the same opportunity. There should be no barriers when it comes to hiring practices for education, right? You should have the same opportunity to that for that. And then the market is going to decide if you're going to be a winner or a loser. That's what liberals favor. And then you have populists who favor order and equality over freedom. So for populists, excuse me, there's two type of populists. There's right-wing populism and left-wing populism. So for populists, right-wing populism, the common example would be Donald Trump, right? Reason why he was able to win in 2016 and 2024 was because he was able to make the argument that the reason why a lot of the people in the Midwest, a lot of people who lived in the Rust Belt, um, and a lot of people while and people that were having economic difficulties, he made the argument that the reason why that was happening was because America was letting it too many people come into the country who were taking advantage of America. The trade deals that America made prior to him coming into office were all in the benefit of other countries. So the reason why you're poor, the reason why you don't have an education, the reason why you lost your house, the reason why you don't have a good job, right? The reason why you cannot afford to send your kids to college is because it's the fault of the others, right? Immigrants, bad trade deals, right? So and he said it, you vote for me and I'll make sure to make America great again. Right? That's right-wing populism. Now you have left-wing populism. Left-wing populism is what you're starting to see now with certain Democrats who are running for the midterms and who are positioning themselves for the 2028 presidential election, where they're saying that the reason why the economy is so terrible right now, the reason why gas is so expensive is because of the rich people, right? The billionaires, right? We gotta tax the rich. They're not paying their fair share. And they're taking all the benefits. and while the rest of us are not enjoying those benefits. So that's left-wing populism, right? Putting the blame on the top 1% who control the country. Okay, so those are the two uh, 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 versions of populism, right wing and left wing. Okay. So conflict with values. So our values lead to there's conflict within our values. Excuse me. Um, s- so this is the major sources of domestic conflict that we have here in the United States. There's three: freedom versus order. Why can't I let my dog run loose? Right? It's I should have that right. I should have that freedom to have my dog run loose. Remember, we're trying to maintain order. If you let your dog run loose, there's a possibility that your dog could injure someone, right? Or the dog could get hurt. So that's why we have rules and regulations, right? Freedom versus equality, right? Why can't school limit their athletes to men, right? Uh, so the freedom, right, to play, to pursue sports at the college or even high school level, right? But then you have the equality aspect. Is should we offer those same opportunities to women, right? Or what about transgender? Should they also have the freedom to participate in these sporting events at the high school, college? So there's a conflict there. Then order versus equality, right? You see it with the civil rights movement, right? Civil rights movement, right, disrupted the social norms of the 50s, right? The protests, the Montgomery bus boycott, the March on Washington, right? Civil disobedience, the sit-ins. But the reason why they were doing this is because they wanted to participate in government. They were tired. African Americans were tired of being second-class citizens. Women's rights, uh, the 19th Amendment, Alice Paul, Susan B. Anthony, mostly Alice Paul, and her fight for women's suffrage. She advocated a more militant approach where women were chaining themselves in front of the White House, going on hunger strikes, demanding the right to vote, right? Again, disrupting the social order where the traditional norms of women were at the time women were expected to be loyal to their husbands, and now you have women being radical, and that again, that's disrupting order. And you see it in the 60s, late 60s, with the second wave of feminism, right? Where women are tired of not having choices, options in life, and now they're demanding more. Women are wanting to go to school, join the workforce, and that is disrupting the nuclear family, right? Where the husband goes to work and the wife stays home and takes care of the kids. But now if women are wanting more options in life, that's going to disrupt the social nuclear family aspect. Gay rights, um, right? The ability to marry someone from from the same sex, right? Or have simple, even have a simple, you know, um, uh, conversation, or a medical procedure, right? At, at the time, it was viewed as, the disrupting the order of things, right? But again, it's the community fighting, advocating for their rights. So those are the domestic conflicts that we've had here in the United States. Okay. So now let's look at who are Americans. So this idea of American identity, which is going to be important for your first discussion post, and the readings are going to talk about the American identity. Very important to understand that immigration has changed the American identity. We tend to forget this, but America, the United States, is a nation of immigrants, right? The only true Americans, right, are the Native Americans. They're the original inhabitants of this continent, right? And as European Americans came over, migrated to the to the continent, right? They wiped out. They started wiping out the Native Americans, and so the country expanded westward. Right, the country did the same thing. They continued this policy of a genocide against the Native Americans. But right after the Constitution is ratified, the new American government orders a census, and this is the date of that census, 1790. 3.9 million Americans, 81% are British in Northern Europe, 20% are slaves, and 1.5 are free blacks. And then look at the 900 census, 1900, excuse me, 1900 census, 76 million Americans. And now we have new immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, 12% African Americans, no more slavery. And then Asian and Latin Americans consist 1%. But because of this immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe, you start to see Americans expressing negativist feelings. Um, these immigrants are taking jobs, they're not assimilating to American society, they're different, even though they're white, they're not the white right, if that makes sense, because these immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe are mostly Catholic, they don't speak English. They have different customs. So America is going to pass an Immigration Act of 1924 to limit, to put quotas in allowing uh, immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe to come into the country. And the images you see here, that's immigration inspection station at Ellis Island. All immigrants were processed through Ellis Island, where they were given a physical and to see if they could enter the country. If they passed the physical, they were allowed in. If they did not, they were put on a boat back home. And just shows you, the political cartoon shows you how the Europeans that are coming in, the new immigrants, have radical ideas that go against our established norms. Oops. All right, next one, the American identity. Uh, Continuing this, we see that in again, the idea is who is a citizen of this new country. So this gets addressed with the first Congress in 1790. Congress passes the Naturalization Act of 1790, which only grants citizenship to free white people. So according to this law, only free white people are citizens of the United States, which means that everyone else is not a citizen of the United States. The 14th Amendment in 1868, part of the Reconstruction Amendments after the Civil War, we now decide who is an American citizen because we have to expand it to the newly free blacks. And right, citizenship is based on birthright. So if are born here in the United States, you are a U.S. citizen. I know the Trump administration has issue with this, and the only way this is going away is if if we pass another amendment, and the chances of that happening are very, very low. The last amendment that we passed happened in the 90s, and that dealt with congressional pay. So an amendment to end birthright citizenship is not gonna pass anytime soon or at all. Then we are going to expand the American identity to Native Americans with the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, which grants them citizenship. Prior to this, Native Americans were considered a foreign nationals. They had they had their own their reservations, their territories where they live. They were they were not sovereign to the United States. But with this, it allows them to participate in our government. But at the same time, it's not going to be until the 30s where they are going to gain suffrage voting rights. But they're citizens, but they're not allowed to actively participate in government. not until the 30s. All right. So if we look at the census, well, the most up-to-date information that we have on the U.S. population from last year, from 2025, as you can see, the U.S. population is 341.8 million. Of that, we have 20.5 Latinos, 13.5 Blacks, Asian 6.9, and then non-Hispanic whites 56.1%. And so we see right a huge increase of people. Um, One of the reasons why we have a huge increase in people is because 1965 Congress removed the tight restrictions on immigration from the 20s. So we got rid of the quota system, which allowed more people from Latin America, Africa, and Asia to migrate to the United States. And one of the reasons why they're coming to the United States is because of what the policies that America is implementing in those continents, like in Central America. The reason why a lot of people from Central America, from Mexico, are coming to the United States is because America's been involved in their country. Like in Mexico would be NAFTA. NAFTA ruined a lot of farmers, a lot of people that lived in the agriculture parts of the country. They couldn't compete with the American farm products that were coming into Mexico, so they lost their farms. So many of them moved to the United States. Asia would be the Vietnam War. After the Vietnam War, where America pulled out, large number of Vietnamese migrated to the United States. Central America, uh, we have right in the 80s, the Reagan administration in Nicaragua and in El Salvador. Right, a lot of those people moved into to the United States because the United States created instability in their countries. Right? 2011, the Obama administration organized a coup in Honduras. So a lot of people from Honduras moved to the United States because of the instability. So it's not that so people are coming to America because again they're trying to escape the instability in their country, right? And also there's a labor market for immigrants here in the United States. American businesses need that cheap labor. So because of this, we have an estimated 12 million immigrants who live in the United States who are undocumented, and this is a big policy issue that America has to confront. What are we going to do for these people? The Trump administration attempted mass deportations. I mean, they're still doing mass deportations, but the American public is not too happy, especially I mean, here in Houston, we saw an individual get killed by ICE. Uh, right, he was going to work, he got killed by ICE. And he was an immigrant, but he had his three sons are U.S. citizens. Up in Minnesota, right, and Minneapolis, right, there's two American citizens who got killed by ICE. There's documented cases of the horrible the horrible conditions at these detention centers where immigrants are being processed. There's also documented cases of Americans being targeted by ICE based solely on their you know ra based solely on racial features, right? Oh, this person is looks Hispanic, Latino, he's speaking Spanish, let's get him. Turns out he's an American citizen, you're violating his right. So the American public not too fond of that, so that's created issues. So what is the new administration, if we do have one in 2028, is the administration going to change policy with two years left in his term? We have to just wait and see. But it's a serious issue that has to be eventually addressed. Oops, going. All right. Is it this one? Yes, the next. So now we're looking at religion. So again, as immigrants move to the country, right, from different places of the world, they bring their religion with them. As of right now, 2025 data from the Census Bureau, 35% of Americans identify as Protestants, 22 Catholic, 10% Christian, non-specific, so they can be a different denomination of Christianity. 6% other, which includes Muslims, are in there. They're lumped together. I wish they really would have separated these. 2% Jewish, and then 1% Mormon. But there is a trend that a growing number of Americans identify with no organized religion at all. Some Americans that is troublesome because again they make the argument that America is losing its foundational values, right? Their Christian values, and to other Americans, right? Um, they see this as a positive, because it stresses, secularism, liberalism, but and it's important to note that right, no organized religion. They're not going to church, but some of these individuals might be, practicing religion with a small group of people. Maybe they get together and read their Bible, or maybe they read the Bible by themselves, and they're not going to church to have that spiritual connection, right? Maybe they're having that connection with themselves or with others, with a small group of people. All right. Now looking at population wise, looking at the American identity, back that census back in the 1900s, only 4% of the population was over the age of 65. Today, about 16% of the population is over the age of 65, and it's going to continue to grow because the advances of modern medicine, people are living longer, right? Um, the population of racial and ethnic group is also younger than the American population as a whole. So 32% of the Latino population is under the age of 18. The 26% of the African American population is under 18, right? So our population is younger, which is good because uh, we- uh, uh, right, these older Americans benefit from Social Security, uh, and they need a younger workforce to work so they can pay into Social Security. So the older Americans have those monthly Social Security checks to keep the economy growing. Uh, so that's a plus for us. We don't want to be like Japan. Japan has a high concentration of elderly people, and they don't have a lot of young people, which is hurting their pension system. So a lot of older Japanese senior citizens are losing their benefits, or are require or they have to go back into the workforce to make ends meet. All right. Now when we look at social classes, it's important to remember that for the most part in US history, the American the American family has been relatively working poor. This idea that, Americans are rich, right? It's not necessarily true, right? I mean, we see this in the Gilded Age, right? There's a huge gap in income inequality, right? The top 1% and the poor, you have people like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan, who were very wealthy individuals, and then you have the rest of the American public right, who were not rich at all. They were working poor. But it starts to shift in the 30s, right? Because of the stock market crash, the Great Depression. People lose faith in the laissez-faire policy, and the government steps in and starts trying to address the income inequality by passing various social programs, right? Um, Social Security, work programs to get the economy moving back again. And then World War II helps, I mean, World War II is the reason why the Great Depression ends, right? You have almost 100% employment. Everyone's working to try to win the war. Women are working in the factories. They're earning money. Men are fighting in the front. When they come back, right, the women have money. Men, right? They can go to college for free because of the GI Bill. That creates the conditions of the 50s where you have the creation of the middle class. And in that middle class, that's the idea that most Americans want, the middle class, the idea where the government is taking care of you. They're incentivizing you, they're providing subsidies for you, to go to school for free. so you can get an education, so you can get a trade, a career, and you can make good money. And that's gonna continue in the 60s, where we make we try to provide health insurance for, well, we do provide health insurance for the elderly, health insurance for the working poor through, Medicare, Medicaid. Um, we provide education access, CTE programs, all stem from LBJ's Great Society. So this idea that we're trying to get rid of poverty, the war on poverty. Right? We want to get everyone to the middle class. But unfortunately, the Vietnam War overheats our economy. America cannot do both, right? Cannot fight a war, spend millions of dollars, and also spend money on social programs. So in the 70s, you start seeing that the government starts funding these government programs less. In the 80s, we get back to the laissez-faire, the idea that less government in our lives is better. With the Reagan administration, the 90s, we start deindustrializing. It kind of starts in the 70s. A lot of these factories that were making American products go overseas because it's cheaper to hire workers overseas than here in America. Because here in America, you have to pay them benefits, vacation and stuff. So overseas, you don't have to do none of that. And then globalization, American companies are competing with other manufacturers around the world. So a lot of people lose their jobs. And then 2007, the Great Recession, people that bought houses all of a sudden find out that they cannot afford their homes. So a lot of banks close. I mean, people get their money back because of the New Deal programs, the FDIC, but it's the fact that you lose your home, people become homeless, and that's when people like Donald Trump come in and start blaming other people, immigrants, right, bad trade deals. And then you see it in 2020, COVID-19. um, People lose faith in government for a bit, and then they restore their faith in government because they see how the Trump administration, even though he doesn't take credit for this, but the Trump administration is the reason why right, we have the COVID vaccines. COVID vaccines, for the most part, help bring down the COVID numbers. And that's when people start questioning, well, why is it that, the government did something good here when it comes to healthcare? Why can the government now provide healthcare, right? Healthcare has become a huge expense. A lot of people cannot afford healthcare. And now we're in the situation where the top 1% hold more wealth than the middle class. The middle class is disappearing. It's harder to buy a home. Most people are renting. Um, People are not going to college because it's so expensive. They don't want to go into debt. The trade schools are becoming too competitive. So when you get out of the trade school and you get your certification, you're finding out that the market is saturated. There's too many people out there with the same skills and certification that now you're not making as much money as you thought you would be making. So are we in a new Gilded Age? We're gonna have to wait and see what happens. All right. So these are the readings for the week. Your chapter one, American government and civic engagement. Chapter one just talks about how Americans engage and in the government, gives you a couple of examples, which is, you can talk about that for your in your post. Reading number one is, what does it mean to be an American? So this is it's a link to a website. You can listen to it, or there's a transcript. If you don't want to read it, just listen to it. It talks about the American identity. So as you listen to this, I believe it's a podcast, or if you're reading it, I want you to focus on these three things: the difference between the American ideals and lived experiences, the connection between citizenship and civic participation, and how diversity and immigration shape American identity. Reading number two, when the idea of home was key to American identity. So this is an article. This is a reading up from a website. So, how the home shaped American identity, how the idea of home was used to exclude people. You got to remember, not everyone in U.S. history at one point in U.S. history had the opportunity to own a home because of various reasons, right? Racial. the most prominent, and the home as both a source of oppression and reform. And then reading number three, Americans are split over the state of the American dream. The American dream is the idea that the middle class, right? I have a job, a car, an education, I'm making good money. Is that still achievable? Well, read the reading there, and as you read, I want you to focus on these three things: how Americans define the American dream, how age and income influence people's perspectives, the difference between believing in the American dream and personally achieving it. So these readings are going to help you develop your post. So this is our first online discussion board prompt. It is due this Thursday. So begin by introducing yourself to the class and sharing the major or academic program you are pursuing. And then next, respond to the following discussion prompt. The meaning of American identity has evolved throughout the nation's history. For some people, being American is connected to shared political values such as freedom, equality, citizenship, and civic participation. For others, American identity is shaped by economic opportunity, home ownership, family, community, and the ability to achieve the American dream. So, what does it mean to be an American, and which factors are more important in shaping American identity today? In your response, clearly explain your position and support your ideas with specific examples and evidence from the assigned readings. Your initial response must be a minimum of 350 words. Use specific evidence from at least one of the readings, include an appropriate citation for the readings you use, and be submitted by the end of the day on Thursday. You must respond to at least two classmates by the end of the day on Sunday. Each response must be a minimum of 250 words. Be thoughtful, respectful, and substantive. Directly engage your classmates' ideas and cite a different assigned reading from the one used in your initial post. Your responses should move the conversation forward by adding new perspective, asking a meaningful question, or respectfully agreeing or disagreeing with your classmates' arguments. Okay. So again, your first initial post due Thursday by midnight, your two other replies due by Sunday. And remember, make sure you cite the readings correctly. Harvard citation. If you do not know how to cite, again, on Blackboard, I have links for you, right, and writing resources that can help you cite the sources correctly. Okay, and there's also a guide there that shows you what I'm looking for, what you're grading, what you'll be graded on. Okay, again, if you have any questions, any comments, something you do not understand, again, please feel free to email me, and I'll try to help you, try to clarify any misconceptions that you've had. But that will be it for this week. Again, make sure, again, cannot stress this enough. First discussion prompt due Thursday by midnight. The two others due by Sunday by midnight. Okay. If you have any questions, again, feel free to email me. And that's it for today.